Hey everyone, welcome back to WorkTech. We're continuing the Greenhouse Open video series, and I'm excited today because we've got the CEO of Greenhouse, Daniel Chait, to tell us all about what's happening at Greenhouse. We're taking an opportunity to sort of check in on Greenhouse. Before you introduce yourself, Daniel, I just want to remind everyone that Greenhouse Open is taking place on May 24th and 25th at the Javits Center in New York City. This is one of my favorite events. It sort of kicks off the spring event season. Always a great group of speakers, a great group of attendees, and you don't have to be a Greenhouse customer to attend. So I meet a lot of different people there, and Greenhouse does a fantastic job of curating just a great event. So there are links wherever you're seeing this to go ahead and save your seat at Greenhouse Open. But let's get at it. Daniel, welcome. It's great to see you.
Thanks, George. Great to see you again. And thanks for that kind intro. I am so excited to be talking to you again and just to, anticipating our first Greenhouse Open since the pandemic. I can't wait to bring the community back together. It's always a special time.
Yeah, and I know the weather in New York City is starting to cooperate. It feels like spring now. So what a great time to have everyone together.
Yes, sir.
So I think most people in the industry know Greenhouse, they know who you are, but just in case, let's start with a quick intro of both you and Greenhouse.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Daniel Chait. I'm the CEO and co-founder here at Greenhouse. And we started in 2012 with a very simple mission to try to help every company become great at hiring. And we feel like that hiring is a really important strategic capability that every winning company needs to have these days. And so they're looking to improve how they do it through better process and better structure to be fair, to be able to compete for top talent. And so Greenhouse helps companies do that. And I'm proud that we've been doing it for 10 years and it feels like we're just getting started.
Yeah, that's great. I certainly, I've been watching Greenhouse come on since 2012, 2013. And it's now, squarely on everybody's list when we're talking about, recruitment technology. And especially for progressive people leaders, whether they're in HR or talent or in the business. But so you mentioned it's been a couple of years since Greenhouse Open. That normally comes along with some updates about the business. So we haven't really had a chance to do a lot of that. So how have things been going for Greenhouse? What's the last few years through this pandemic? Some sectors struggled. Recruiting tech didn't seem to struggle. What was it like for all of you?
It's been in a really interesting period, George. Like you said, there's been a lot of growth, but also a lot of learning. I guess I would say heading into the pandemic, if we can all cast our mind back to the end of 2019, Greenhouse had been going for 7 years in perfect economic conditions, right? Interest rates were low and getting lower, unemployment was low and getting lower, venture capital was flowing, and it just felt like the good times were never gonna stop. And that was something we really talked a lot about, was we need to make sure that we're building an organization that's prepared for inevitably when conditions change. And sort of during the boom times, maybe that, I don't know if it falls on deaf ears, but everyone goes, okay, but come on, things are great. But we always kept that in mind. Well, of course, when 2020 hit, and 13 million unemployed in one jobs report and everybody disrupted and worked from home, we really had to, that was a moment for Greenhouse, because that was when our ideas were really going to be tested for the first time about building an enduring business. And so we had been built for hypergrowth. We did a staff correction, a budget correction at that time. We had to lay people off. It was really painful for those people, and a tough decision for us as a company. And that was in April of 2020. What was interesting was by about late May, we started to see that the business indicators were largely still really healthy. So growth was still there, customers were still buying, existing customers were renewing. And in a lot of cases, we had customers that were very accelerated by the pandemic, online businesses benefiting from the move to remote work and the instant digitization of basically everything. And so we started trying to hire those people back that we had laid off, and they all already had jobs. So we hired a few, but basically we were very quickly back in growth mode. And so 2020 ended up being a year of good growth for Greenhouse. And then coming out of 2020 was when we said, okay, we're really re-accelerating back to sort of peak growth conditions for our business. We need to bring on some new capital, bring on a growth partner, which I'm happy to talk a little bit about next. But since then, it's really been a period of sustained growth for Greenhouse, and I think we're really benefiting from some of the big trends and disruptions in the industry. Mostly the fact that we've been saying for the entirety of our company's existence that hiring is critical to companies, that you need to compete for talent. And I think the pandemic threw that into stark relief for everyone. Like your people are getting poached incessantly. They don't even have to change their commute anymore to get a different job. They can just swipe left on your window and swipe right on another window, and they've got a different job. And so that competition is being felt by everyone, and so the need to compete is even higher.
Yeah. I mean, that was a moment, April that year, that was a moment for everyone. And I've said this to you before, but for anybody who's new to this part of the conversation, the way you handled that, the reduction in force was transparent, and it's not easy for you. It's certainly not easy for the people that have to receive that message. Doesn't make it all better, but it was done really, really well and sort of out in the open. And, kudos to you. It says a lot to the culture and how Greenhouse walks the walk as an HR and, people oriented, people first kind of business. In the, it says, what did mom always say? How you react when things are going poorly says more about who you are, and that's not that it was going poorly for Greenhouse, but you had to react to a poor economic,
Yeah, it was a tough moment, and I appreciate the kind words. I think we had a similar internal discussion where we said, listen, these are the kinds of things that challenge people, and the way you perform in this moment, can be career defining. And I'm incredibly proud of the way people on our team stepped up, both in that really trying few first months and weeks of the pandemic when everybody was feeling the stress and uncertainty, supporting each other, standing by each other, helping each other, and then coming out of it and back into, accelerating into growth. We had people stepping into roles that they'd never done before, taking on new responsibilities, in some cases doing grunt work that they had already grown past, but just needed to happen, and there was no one else to do it. So it's like pick up a shovel and do it. And I have a lot of pride with the way that our team responded. And then what we saw from the industry as a whole is, I think, this idea that companies are really starting to think about what matters to their people was made even more powerfully obvious during that time, and I think since has only been accelerated. Used to be in the olden days that the people sort of showed up to the factory, but the business was thought of as the factory, and now the people are the business in almost every organization. I mean, I'm sitting here right now in front of a $2,000 laptop that's basically all the equipment I need to do my job. I don't need a factory. I don't need an office building. And so if you're not going to pay attention to the people, what are you going to pay attention to?
Right. So like all of us, we went through this, still going through a confusing time, but let's say at that moment, it was extra confusing. Then you came into this growth. Congratulations on that. And some of that growth, it seems that in my travels, I'm seeing bigger and bigger customers of Greenhouse, where we used to look at Greenhouse sort of on the middle market side of things. Can you talk a little bit about that, about the adoption, about maybe some of the things that might have changed in the last couple of years in a big way for Greenhouse?
Yeah, well, you said something right at the start of this conversation, George, that is new for me, which is you said, well, most people by now know who Greenhouse is. So, it's like, that's a new thing for me. I mean, I step into conversations now where folks kind of have heard of us and have used our products and maybe multiple times. And we have a brand that has kind of gotten out there. And that's not been the case for a long time. So we had this sort of core passionate user base that knew us and had really strong feelings of community around business. And then you take like one step to the side. It's like, who is that? Never heard of you. And now I feel like our brand has kind of gotten out there a little bit more. Some of that's just sticking around. I mean, you do something long enough for 10 years, eventually, the name gets out, but I think we've done a few things well to earn that. And part of that is, as our customers have grown, we've grown with them. We continue investing millions of dollars every year on R&D to build out the product. We've built out a really strong professional services team to help our customers who are at a larger scale with things like adoption and strategy and re-implementation. We've gone through now working with some of the fastest growing companies literally in history. You're talking about companies like Lyft and Snapchat and these hyper growth companies that have been on Greenhouse, Slack. I mean, we could go on. And we've learned a lot of lessons about how to support a company that goes through that type of growth and gets that kind of scale. And so, we're always going to be focused on making sure that we can deliver, and we're never going to overpromise. So we're often in conversations with customers or with potential customers talking about, hey, here are the things we're really good at. Here's why you should buy Greenhouse. And also, here's some things to look out for that we may not be right for you. And I think that focus on making sure that every customer engagement is one that we know we can do well at serves us well over the long term.
Yeah. Yeah. Culturally, from my seat as an analyst, I talk to, I most all of the vendors out there. And usually the analyst is the one in the room saying, are you sure you're ready for that? Are you sure you can support that? But with Greenhouse, it's always been me being in the room with you saying, why don't you just go up market? I mean, it seems like you've got everything. And it's always been very deliberate, your focus and your intention on, who you're working with and delivering success. So, it's still there, and, you haven't sold your soul yet. So that's good.
Right. Yeah. I like how you say, yeah, you always got to hold that possibility out. Look, I mean, we started this process back in like 2017, or thereabouts, thinking, okay, we have to start investing in moving up market. But we think of it as expanding and growing up market. And so that takes time. These investments are significant. Some of these are multi-year journeys. And to make the kind of change that we're looking to make for an organization, to bring on structured hiring, to move up the hiring maturity curve, and to do these things, like they're not easy. So, we have all the ambition in the world. Our mission is to help every company become great at hiring, not to help the first 7,000 Greenhouse customers become great at hiring. And so we'll get there. And our track record of continued growth demonstrates that. But I think part and parcel of that is taking seriously your responsibility to, like, where are you focused and playing where you can win, and then investing in kind of what's next and building for that. And so we're always looking to do that. And so we have customers now that are kind of up to 10,000 employees in size that we do really well with. And we're investing in those companies that are like 15, 20,000 employees in size, and making sure that we can support those needs over the coming years. And so, that's a continuous journey for us, for sure.
Yeah. And that the product is obviously, paramount, but it's not just about the product. There are other factors with these businesses, where they're located, geography, and now that you've expanded into new geographies, right, in the last few years.
100%. And over the 2018, 2019, we were getting business. We had business in Europe that was a growing and significant part of our business, and we finally made the plunge to open up an office in Europe to support that geography right at the end of 2019. And so, we hired a person to open up the office. I had plans to go to Dublin, which is where our office is located in EMEA, in March of 2020, which had to be postponed. And so that office has been growing, and I actually just took that visit last month, George.
Wow. Almost
3 years after I was meaning to. 2+ years after I was meaning to. And in the intervening time, it's now almost 100-person office. And that office is growing faster than the rest of our business put together. It's wildly diverse. We have 15 nationalities and 12 different languages spoken in our Dublin office alone, supporting our 850 or so customers in the EMEA region across all industries. And so it's just really neat to see. I mean, I can tell you, I flew over to Dublin. I came over into the office. You open up the door and you're greeted by someone, and immediately it feels like the Greenhouse brand is there. It's not just colors and logos. The spirit, the culture, the level of talent and engagement with customers. And it was really neat to see. I had dinner with a customer who said that they feel like Greenhouse is so important to her career that if she were to leave her job and get a job at another business, she wouldn't take that job unless they had Greenhouse.
Oh, wow.
And to hear that from a customer in another continent altogether was just really, really rewarding.
Yeah. That's a trend. Our friends at Aptitude Research, Madeline Lorana, she published a report recently where the heads of TA were saying that they would or wouldn't take a position based on the tech stack. And that's, it's good to be on the positive side of that.
Yes, it's incredibly rewarding when you get, you kind of have this thing like, oh, we're going to go sell them and that's our best face forward. And then, the reality is like, it's not so great once you get the product. But the fact of someone who's actually a customer saying that they're basically going to put their career on the line for you on the, in future steps, like it's just very rewarding. And it makes you feel like all the hard work that you're doing is really paying off for people. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Now you had another big milestone along the way. You mentioned it earlier, the investment from TPG and their Rise fund as well, both. Mm-hmm. So we discussed that on WorkTech here. I'll link that in the article if anybody's interested. But now, how long ago is that? Was that a year ago or?
Yeah, it was right at the end. The conversations were ongoing at the end of 2020, and the deal closed in early 2021. So just over a year ago. Yeah.
And so now, when we spoke then, it was like, well, it's too early to really, it's, we've got big plans. What's the impact then?
It's been great. So if you remember from that original conversation, there were two investment groups within TPG, which is this big, investment firm. There's all kinds of capital applied to all kinds of different strategies, but two of their funds led this investment. TPG Growth, which is their growth investment fund, and TPG Rise, which is impact investing. And so the partnership with TPG is meant to reflect those two strategies. And so on the growth side, it was capital and expertise around growth at the next stage. And we've gotten such great advice. We're connected to internal working groups from other portfolio companies to drive expertise. We have ways to save costs through that partnership. We get to have strategy conversations about things that are going to happen to us at the next level. And it's been just a great, in addition to just money, set of advice and support for a company at our scale and kind of growth. And then on the Rise side, that's where we really get to finally kind of unify our capital base, our investor base, with our own values and commitment to DE&I. And so having those type of conversations in the boardroom where it's not just about dollars and cents and ARR and P&Ls, but also like, hey, what kind of impact are we having in the world, and how can we align, to these UN sustainability goals about reducing racial disparity and helping support gender equality in the workplace. Getting that kind of support from your investors is invaluable, and they're the real deal. It's been fantastic.
Oh, that's good to hear. That's good to hear because you mentioned the focus is normally on the P&L and the ARR and quarterly results. So that's fantastic.
And look, I don't take anything away from that. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that we're a successful business, and in fact, being a successful business is what gives us the right to go have the impact that we want to go have. So I never shy away from trying to build the strongest business I can, but doing it in concert with and keeping in mind the focus of the larger purpose of it all, and what are you actually trying to drive in the world, and not having that seen as a distraction in the boardroom, but having seen that as part and parcel of your mission, and then having resources to draw upon to help you get there, because it's not easy. I mean, I don't want to make it, this is hard stuff. We're really trying to help companies overcome internal bias, measure the impact of DE&I efforts and hiring. There's real work being done there, and so having a partner in TPG Rise who can do that with us has been great.
Yeah. Well, don't sell yourself short, though. It's, we're all coming off of watching, or at least I am, these shows about WeWork and Uber and Theranos and these, tech companies and CEOs that, it's refreshing to hear of a fund focused on those issues. And again, back to your very deliberate intentions and focus, about what you're trying to accomplish, and picking an investment partner that is going to align with that. So, that's all good stuff. And moving right along, does that reflect, you mentioned a little bit of it earlier, do you think that all reflects a change in the market, a change in how customers in this space are viewing people or people tech?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are long-standing trends in the relationship between people and businesses that were accelerated tremendously during the pandemic. So value has been moving from kind of physical capital to human capital, the idea that I talked about earlier about, there is no factory anymore.
Yeah.
Today, like, your job is kind of the human, and then sort of a constellation of tools for collaboration and generating information and ideas. And so those are sort of horizontal tools that everybody can use, like things like Slack and Zoom and Gmail, and then kind of vertical specialized tools for everything from finance to marketing, and of course hiring. And so these kind of modern tools of HR have kind of blended into the broader idea of work tech. And everybody, I mean, you're the leader in that brand. I mean, talk about work tech. It really is the sort of place that people go to do their jobs now. And I think there was a time where software companies were kind of taking every piece of paper on a manager's desk and saying, how do I put that in the computer, right? And you had these big companies like Oracle and Salesforce created on the back of digitizing paper processes. And now modern work tech companies can take a people-first organization and they go, well, what are all the people doing? And how can we help those people do that better, right? Yeah. And so you go basically look at everything someone does in a company and you say, well, how do I help them improve the way that they go about that? And so for hiring, it's things like, how do they spend their money more efficiently? How do they make hires more fairly and more objectively? How do they identify talent that their competitors can't identify and do it more quickly? And so there's a whole new relationship that we see between people and technology and companies, and it's all coming together in this really neat way. And so it's a cool time in business to see what people first companies are really doing to build a modern organization around humans and technology and how they relate.
Yeah, that's all very true, and well said. So shifting gears a little bit in the interest of time to open and a little bit of product. Will there be any company or product announcements at Open, and can you leak any of that here today?
There will be. You always got to have something fun to look forward to. So we're going to be talking a lot about people first companies and what they're like and what you need to know about it. But we're going to make a couple announcements that'll be pretty fun. There's always some goods there. If you want to look to the past and see some of the announcements that we've made about acquisitions and investments that we've made, that may be a good indication about some of the things we may be ready to launch. So stay tuned. I don't want to spoil the party too much.
All right.
And then for those of you that are greenhouse customers, or we affectionately say greenhouse nerds that really want to get under the hood, there's all kinds of new product updates and announcements around things like permissions and automation and back-end system integrations, and even some things around the visual design. We've been hard at work. We're not just sitting around here, George.
Yeah. Well, and the exciting announcements are awesome, but those product, blocking and tackling, that's the stuff that scales. That's the stuff that allows you to leverage those exciting types of announcements that sounds like you might be making at Open.
That's right. And there's a lot of love that goes into the product every year. And we hear it from our customers. It's great to hear these questions, and then you get in there and you're making some really nitty gritty announcement about what happens in the moment where you have a demo sandbox, and then you have like a company that you acquired and you want to merge the data on the back end and it works the way you want it. And someone in the back of the room is like, yes, I've been waiting for that my whole life. So, there's always a bunch of that stuff, as well as the big kind of tempo announcements.
Yeah. And you talked about everybody getting back together for the first time in a few years. We're all excited about that. Is there anything else that you're looking forward to at Open?
Well, it's going to be inspirational. We've got some great speakers lined up and some great messages that we're going to be hearing. The opportunity, George, to get physically together with people in a safe way. We're really taking a lot of precautions. We're working with our venue to make sure that we've got great safeguards in place. but to just sit down and have a chat with people that you haven't seen in a few years, there's nothing else like it.
Yeah, yeah. And many people are familiar with the Javits. I could say the last open I was at the Javits, Greenhouse does an amazing job of transforming the Javits into, I don't know, it's not the Javits. It's a very open, warm space. So it'll be conducive to everybody getting together for sure. And well, I'll tell you what, we've gone a little over, but there's always so much to talk about. And I could have dug in on any one of these and spent an hour. Thank you so much. I know how busy you are, the event's coming up, and you've got a business to run. Thanks for being here, Daniel.
Thanks so much, George. See you next week.
Yeah, and everybody remember, Greenhouse Open is taking place on May 24th and 25th at the Javits in New York City. Links are here if you want to save a seat. You don't need to be a customer to be there. And I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it. And I hope to see everybody there. All right. Thanks all.